Yeah.
So now the next category is about data protection. So it's how do we protect the, I mean, it's funny because all of ASVS is about data protection, but this specific category is called data protection, and it has to do specifically with how, I mean, where you're storing data and whether it's being backed up, and what kind of data is being stored in the browser. Is it sensitive data? Is it stuff like that? So if we look through this one, there are only
How many
3 subcategories
subcategories?
here.
3 subcategories, yeah.
Yeah, so this, I mean, mainly when I'm looking through this, I'm thinking about the session token. Is it in the cookies or is it in local storage? Hopefully it's not in local storage. Usually you want your session token stored in cookies, and you want it inaccessible by JavaScript. Session storage would be like, a second to that in quality. And local storage would be awful, because what happens is local storage is always accessible by JavaScript. And when the difference between local storage and session storage is that when somebody closes the tab, session storage gets wiped out. Local storage just does not. It remains between all of your sessions. So if you were to close that tab and reopen it, all the data is still the same. So we want to make sure, when I'm looking through the section, I'm thinking like, where are you storing your session data? There's also some talk here about backups. Are you backing up? Are you performing regular backups? Have you tested whether or not you can restore them quickly? Then there's also stuff that's in the user's interest, which is nice. I'm glad that they added this here. So verify that users have a method to remove or to export their own data on demand. I think that's a really great.
These are for some compliance, I believe, like GDPR or the other ones. They require this.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think regardless, this is something that should be in every application, I think.
And to be honest, some items such as 815, I believe we need to remove that from ASVS, because some of them are related to infrastructure and some of them are related to application, and ASVS should be exclusively about application security.
This is true. Yeah, this one is about whether or not you back up and
backup.
restore.
This is kind of more infrastructure.
It's a bit of a gray area, but you're right. It definitely falls into cloud and infrastructure.
Yeah. Because if you want to add that, there are tons of other, like you can literally add CIS benchmark to the ASVS.
Yeah, that's true.
And
there was something here I wanted to mention that I think it's particularly interesting, which is we talked about how there's different, your language, usually the language that you write with usually will have 2 different random number generators, regular and secure. Well, this is also true for strings. So generally speaking, if you're using strings to store passwords, those strings get saved into memory. And if you're using, specifically, if you're using a language where there's no memory management, which is, most languages, unless you're using C or C++, I don't know, maybe Rust too. I haven't really started to dig into Rust, but I'm sure there are other languages as well. But for the most part, if you're writing code in JavaScript or Java or .NET, C# or, PHP, you name it, one of the languages that you're more likely to use for a web application, you're storing your passwords in a string variable. And if you are using a dynamically typed language like JavaScript or Python, you don't really even get control over that. I mean, for the most part, I know that there's some exceptions, but ideally you would be writing it into a different type of object that allows you to overwrite that data in memory. And a lot of languages actually offer that. Java, for instance, has, I don't remember, but Java and .NET, I know for sure there's a string, and then there's one called, it's some kind of a mutable string, so that it won't come to me in the time that I'm trying to think of this. But it's a string that lets you overwrite all the data with zeros, so that after you're done using a password or a key, you can erase it from RAM, from memory. For languages like JavaScript and Python, it's a bit more difficult, but there are ways to force garbage collection. anyways, I thought that was an interesting one to cover because I was
for Java, actually, as you told, like the string is immutable and cannot be removed from memory, I believe.
Yeah,
but the
and
safest
that's true
option
for
is
most
a
of these
string
websites.
builder. Actually, we can use a
String builder. Thank you. That's right.
Yeah.
It has a method that I think is called clear, maybe write, and you can just write zeros.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's good.